Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WWEP, or the Weekly Wrestling Entertainment Podcast. So what I'm really going to be doing is talking, of course, about World Wrestling Entertainment, that is WWE, something I'm an avid fan of. The fact is, I tried doing a weekly film-related podcast, but the problem was that I would either review films or talk about the big stories as separate videos, and therefore I didn't really get the chance to talk about those things again, or it didn't make sense at least to talk about those things again, and I would end up talking about a lot of other smaller, lesser interesting stories. However, with World Wrestling Entertainment, it's the longest running weekly show perhaps of all time, which is something that makes it, of course, very entertaining, and it's not like every other TV show that it runs by season, it just runs year round. So every week there's obviously something interesting to look forward to, and this week in fact was really significant. I was going to review Money in the Bank, but even Raw after that just really came together and inspired me to, you know what, finally get this kick started. I've been thinking about this for a while. Now, with my history, of course, regarding WWE, I was a big, massive fan around what is usually referred to as the aggression era, talking early 2000s and whatnot, and then post that I did start to lose a bit of interest. There were a few events here and there. I still do remember the Benoit tragedy as something that obviously made me feel a little more distant from WWE. However, I was still relatively up to date with a few things that were happening. Who was champion, I wasn't watching as much, but over the past year, I've really gotten back into it full-fledged. That is everyday devotion, watching every single show, at times even NXT if I get the time, looking into stories, reading up on rumors, and just everything really happening. And I'm really interested and, of course, once again, engaged and engrossed in what's going on, and I love talking about WWE, so this is another way of me just expressing my passion for something I am also very passionate about. Now, with regards to where WWE is today, we're in what is described as the Authority era or the PG era. There are definitely their problems. I think in-ring ability is undoubtedly at its peak almost, but you don't have everyone being a distinct character. It's more of a realistic tone with regards to characters, with regards to their names. It's not as flashy or as cartoony as it was back in the day, and that does have its pros and its cons, and I feel like it has its cons with regards to some storylines because they tried to go a bit ridiculous. I think post-WrestleMania, it took them time to find their footing with Seth Rollins as champion, but ever since, they've really managed to do a good job. And that has, of course, led to various feuds with the other members of The Shield, with Randy Orton, with Kane as well to some degree, and finally now to Money in the Bank, which is what I'm here to talk about because it was a great pay-per-view. Amongst the pay-per-views so far this year, though, I would say Extreme Rules and Payback were amongst my favorites. That I Quit match was probably the match of the year so far, but definitely have to say that Money in the Bank was something special as well. A lot of great matches to talk about, a lot of interesting things to talk about, a lot of speculation to be done, so let's get straight to it. Now, of course, the pre-show had R-Truth and King Barrett, which had its repercussions sort of on Raw, where they had a rematch. R-Truth stole a win both times, and to be brutally honest, this is a decently interesting thing. You have King What's Up, which is a funny gimmick because R-Truth is a good wrestler. He was a little bit bigger, say, a couple of years ago, or at least he had more screen time or more relevance to the storyline in some form. And even with his Intercontinental Championship run, or at least running for it, well, he wasn't actually champion, he definitely was a bigger character at the time. Of course, he's just a little bit, you know, behind the scenes kind of stuff, doing a lot of commentary, which he's always fun at. And these matches were fine. They weren't particularly relevant to a lot of the bigger things because there were 6 major matches, the Money in the Bank ladder match and the 5 championship matches. Now, I really want to start talking about the Money in the Bank ladder match because, of course, there used to be 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches. Now it's just 1, and I was shocked. And I'm sure not the only one, but I was absolutely shocked when Sheamus won. I was thinking in my head, amongst the 7 competitors, I thought Kofi had the least chance of winning. He's with the New Day. They had the Tag Team Championship at the time, just before the event. So I was thinking that, you know, I don't see Kofi Kingston winning this. I don't see him beating someone along the lines of even Rollins or a potential Reigns or Lesnar, as I'll get to in a moment. But, you know, as time goes on, Kofi Kingston is being developed well once again. I think he's definitely a great in-ring wrestler. He had a great Intercontinental Championship run. Right now he's with the New Day, so I wouldn't say this necessarily drowned his ability. I feel like he's adding more to the New Day itself, but he had no shot in my opinion. Nor did Dolph Ziggler. He won in the past. He cashed it in. He won the championship. I thought to myself, you know what? I don't see Ziggler really fitting into the whole thing. Now, there were 4 other superstars I thought that had a much bigger shot than Sheamus. First off, Neville. Of course, the man that gravity forgot. He's really just come on the scene ever since post-WrestleMania when he debuted. And in these 3 months alone, he is almost a fan favorite. His in-ring ability is nothing short of fantastic. And that really adds to the fact that people love him because of that, as well as, you know, he does have a bit of charisma. He's used a lot of his mic skills. He did challenge Kevin Owens as well. So he's definitely got a long way to go, but I felt like it wasn't going to be him just because it might be a little too soon. You know, you wouldn't want to really blow your load, if you will, and just have him be champion so soon. So I think it makes sense for them to wait a while. Maybe next year's Money in the Bank might be Neville's. Randy Orton, another past winner. I didn't think he had too much of a shot, but a dark horse chance. It was really Roman Reigns and Kane, because I was thinking, lately, everything that's been happening has been very story-oriented. Normally, the Money in the Bank ladder match winner tends to be someone from, you know, outside, not necessarily part of the story. But I was thinking that, you know, Roman Reigns and Kane this time, it would have been fitting to have either of them win. Roman Reigns, of course, because he lost his chance at WrestleMania, and ever since, it's been kind of strange that he hasn't really turned on Ambrose at this point, because he's been supporting him so much as a brother. He's a good man, but the fact is Roman Reigns only got 1 shot at the championship one-on-one. He didn't even get a shot at Payback, which is kind of ridiculous. No, sorry, Extreme Rules. He got a shot at Payback in a Fatal 4-Way, which is still kind of ridiculous. So in my head, I thought Roman Reigns needs to get a little bit more of a push, as you see that WWE is actually doing. They're making him more of a crowd pleaser, more of a crowd favorite before they really put him over the edge. And of course, his thing with Bray Wyatt that happened during the match was, well, interesting. There was more of an explanation of that on Raw, but at the same time, I think it was, at first it felt kind of jarring, a little unnecessary. There was no build up to it. It wasn't as bad as the one where they were building between Bray Wyatt and Ryback for Payback. I felt like that was so last minute, unnecessarily done. And at least this one has a little more consequence. Would have pissed off Roman Reigns a lot more. But I really wanted to see Kane win. In my head, I thought Kane was going to win. Rollins was going to win by the end of the night. And Kane was going to cash it in. And there was going to be this massive feud between Rollins and Kane, which is being built for so long. Kane is the big red machine. There were seeds of that planted at Raw, which I'll get to in a moment. But my God, I just want him to don the mask once again, turn against the Authority, and have one last awesome run. Sheamus won, however. I think Sheamus, since his return, has been nothing short of a badass. So I'm happy to see Sheamus win. It's a new thing they've really added to the storyline. Nothing necessarily in continuity, but a new factor that is going to be played around with soon. And I'm looking forward to see how it really plays out. He's going to have more of a feud with Orton in the times to come. Now, with regards to the Divas Championship match, Nikki Bella and Paige, once again, twin magic, and I'm surprised they weren't disqualified. I mean, the referee saw it was Brie Bella, and Brie Bella did technically pin Paige, which should count as a disqualification. So, from that perspective, I'm a little confused. It was a relatively longer match, lasting over 10 minutes, more than most Divas matches you would see nowadays. And it was a good match nonetheless. Nikki Bella, of course, won. Either way, Paige was not walking away with the championship just as yet. I feel like Battleground or SummerSlam is really going to have that happen. Big Show and Ryback was a match I was really looking forward to. I felt like they might have done it a little early in terms of showing the fact that Ryback could actually shell-shock the Big Show. I was hoping they'd save that for Money in the Bank. They did show it on Raw, however, which of course increased the anticipation for the match, so not such a bad idea. However, the match ended in disqualification. It was a great match. There was a lot of unorthodox stuff. He literally started with the meat hook. They were doing a lot of their signatures from the get-go. It was definitely a high-intensity match, and I was hoping for a little bit more. However, you know, by the end of it, it was a disqualification, and I feel like The Miz, Ryback, and The Big Show are going to have more of a feud as I get to Raw in a moment. One of the arguably matches of the night, John Cena and Kevin Owens. Their first match at Elimination Chamber, I have to tell you, was fucking brilliant. I mean, those two guys had one of the most just awe-inspiring matches that I've seen in a while. So happy Owens won that match, and I really thought Owens would beat Cena again. I thought this is, because there's been rumors around that this storyline is going to play out very differently. I mean, it has been generally different from a lot of other storylines, but I was thinking in the sense, or along the lines, of Kevin Owens not losing to Cena. Cena actually has a record of sorts for having beaten everyone that he's been in the ring with, so to have him beat Owens and keep that record up, fine, makes sense, but I mean, I was hoping Owens would take this one once again. And, of course, he's going to challenge him for the U.S. Championship soon, which is something that I'll get to in a moment once again. Something important, no doubt, but something I'm looking forward to. And, by the way, that flip that Cena did and they converted into the pin, my God, I'm still in shock at just how fantastic that was. These two can perhaps create some of the most entertaining matches. John Cena really can work with pretty much anyone, and in this almost 20-minute match, they gave it their all, and I loved it. The Tag Team Champions, it's finally great to see the Primetime Players be the Tag Team Champions. They've been hyped up for a while, performing a lot of main event, not so much Raw and SmackDown. They beat the New Day, the absolute crowd least favorites, if there's any other way to put it. First ever openly gay tag team champion, that is Darren Young, which is, I mean, it's certainly a step forward in a more progressive era that at least WWE is trying to have, promoting diversity, promoting a lot of, whether racial or even having more diva prominence, as you're starting to see a bit of a transition into. It's definitely good to see, and I mean, the Primetime Players are definitely great. I think the crowd still is a little more on the side of Titus, however, just because of his in-ring presence, but I do feel that this will really give Darren Young the relevant push. But for me, the match of the night, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, that gave everything they had. My God, I mean, I've never seen two men push themselves to the limit like this. Maybe Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Hell in a Cell, maybe a steel cage match here or there, but these two men definitely had one for the classics of ladder matches. This was one incredible match. Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose really went to the limit. When you thought it was about to end, then Ambrose is on the side. They go into the crowd. They come out. They almost get the title. Rollins gets pissed, just drowns Ambrose in chairs, and the way it ended was so nail-biting. And to pull something like that off is not easy. That could have easily slipped away from Rollins' hands and had repercussions for the entire event, and I mean, or the storyline. And I love the fact that Triple H came out at the end, but there were a few gripes I had with the show in general. I was hoping Ryback and Big Show would be more of a show in general. I feel like that's probably going to play out a Battleground. Nikki Bella should have been disqualified. I was very surprised by Sheamus, but I'm hoping to see how they bring him in, whether he'll be with the Authority or not. And at the end of the show, they started, it was so prolonged at the end, like there was something prepared post the Ambrose-Rollins match, but nothing happened. Like, they showed 4 or 5 replays, Triple H with Rollins, and then an interviewer comes out to talk to Rollins. All he says is, "I did it by myself," and walks away? Really? I mean, there was this kind of hype that someone special was going to return, something was going to happen, a new cog in the entire storyline, whatever it might be. Nothing. And so the ending kind of left me at a bit of a loss, but I was definitely, those last 3 matches, Owens, Cena, Primetime Players, New Day, and the ladder match, blew me away, and I was very happy to see each of those matches. However, it is the next day's Raw that really inspired me to say, you know what, I need to start podcasting. Even if this is not up to the mark just as yet, I'm going to try and figure a lot of things out, try and have more of a structure to it, maybe talk about certain other things. I definitely want to focus on this and definitely talk about it because there is a lot happening and developing in this world. First off, by the way, it opened with a tribute to the late Dusty Rhodes, may he rest in peace, a fantastic wrestler that is, of course, a Hall of Famer and will be remembered as one of the legends of World Wrestling Entertainment. His 2 children, Cody Rhodes and, well, as you would know more popularly, Goldust and Stardust, in fact, inducted him into the Hall of Fame, and seeing that image was something just really not horrifying, but it's certainly emotionally moving in more ways than one. And the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, will have a career long to be remembered. Now, on Raw, there were a lot of interesting developments, of course, coming off of Money in the Bank, building up for Battleground. And the difference now is Battleground is 5 weeks away. We've had Payback, Elimination Chamber, and Money in the Bank all 2 weeks apart. All 2 weeks apart. Even Payback was like 3 weeks, I think, after Extreme Rules. So, I mean, there have been very short gaps, and rumors suggest that the writers have an easier time building up storylines. I feel like maybe for the bigger storylines it works. For some of the smaller ones, they just feel incredibly just thrown in there. Like I said, Wyatt and Ryback felt that was one of the most effortless storylines, in my opinion, in recent times. However, 5 weeks also is a long time to really build up a solid storyline, and I mean, they can do a lot of things with that, considering the fact that you don't have the separate rosters. You don't have 5 episodes of Raw and 5 episodes of the Raw roster. Now with the combined roster, having 5 weeks makes it all the more harder, because you're going to have 10 appearances of, say, Seth Rollins or Dean Ambrose or any of the characters, and that's just going to make it a lot harder. Maybe they might have to stretch it out, but they could add a lot more complexity to it, maybe build it up a little slower, have a lot of different things happening, a lot more backstage stuff, which is what I really liked about this episode of Raw, the June 15th episode of Raw, that there was a lot more backstage fun, a little more action, a lot more conversation going on, something that WWE was missing in the beginning of this year, but something that's definitely come back. Now, of course, R-Truth and Barrett did have a bit more of a feud, and it was funny how R-Truth wasn't sure that he had to fight. I think R-Truth is definitely a more comedic character, and it's good to see him like that. But, however, I hope the storyline doesn't last all the way to Battleground. It might be a little bit of a stretch, a little bit unnecessary. I feel like there are a lot more things that in the coming weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, they could still introduce that will be relevant at the July 17th pay-per-view event that is Battleground. Moving on, there was, of course, The Miz and The Big Show, and The Miz won, of course, in the cheapest of ways, and he beat The Big Show, and I think he's really going to use that to his advantage now to try and get into a triple threat, maybe face off for the Intercontinental Championship, of course, throw his weight around his whole superstardom act, and try and actually be a little more relevant, because, I mean, The Miz was champion at one point. People tend to underestimate The Miz because of how cocky his character is. But trust me, The Miz is a pretty good wrestler, and I feel like he could pull off something incredible, or at least have some good matches, whether it's against The Big Show, whether it's against Ryback. We've seen him perform in the past. I feel like lately he hasn't been as featured as some might hope, but it's going to be good to see. They didn't play out the Miz and Sandow thing as much as I hoped, so now that that's sort of drowned out, I feel like The Miz should be part of this Intercontinental Championship run. Moving on, it was interesting to see Paige go 2-on-1 in a handicap match against the Bella Twins. I was hoping the Divas would actually side with Paige, have all the Divas come out at the end of that match and just go to town on everyone, just, you know, have this incredible brawl, build up for something called Battleground that you could actually feature dozens and dozens of superstars at once, because you can in fact introduce a lot of new divas as well. These 5 weeks should be used to introduce new divas as well. Maybe have a big fatal 4-way or something. Maybe let Paige win the title at SummerSlam. A lot of titles tend to change hands at SummerSlam, but really, because if you look at the NXT divas, whether it's Becky Lynch or anyone else, they are really up to the mark. Their storyline is fantastic. There was a 2-way win in a triple threat where there was 1 pin and 1 submission at the same time, and stuff like that you don't see so often, even in the WWE. That stuff is not easy to pull off. I'm talking Raw and SmackDown, but the NXT Divas storyline is something that you should actually really look into. It's incredibly interesting. I feel like introducing some of them as you introduce Neville and Kevin Owens and possibly Sami Zayn very soon, once again, I feel can do a lot of great, not just for those divas, but for the divas division in general. And I think Battleground is more likely to have a massive divas match. If you're going to have Nikki versus Paige one-on-one again, unless Paige wins the title, I feel like it's going to not be a necessary match. Moving on, of course, Kevin Owens really established himself as a big dick today by powerbombing Machine Gun Kelly. Really? I mean, there's no way to have yourself as more of a heel than powerbombing your guest, who is not even a wrestler, who is loved in the state of Ohio, and just throwing him through a table, laughing about it. My God, man, I don't even... Why? Because Machine Gun Kelly stuck his hand out for a handshake? Are you... It's great, though, and I mean, Cena wasn't even on the show, but he cut quite a bit of a promo himself in order to really establish the fact that now, Owens might have lost. Owens has another motivation at hand. He still wants to, of course, prove something to his kids they didn't exactly get to do. However, the United States Championship is the ideal way to transition Owens into the WWE, really make him a big star. I feel like this is Cena's match to lose at this point. Letting the youngster really come up, winning something like the U.S. title, the Intercontinental Championship, really builds you up for bigger things, for greater things, like the WWE World Heavyweight Championship eventually a year or so from now. However, Cena losing would obviously make him, a little bit out of this storyline. Of course, there are a dozen different feuds that I'm sure WWE already has planned for Cena, so I'm looking forward to see where they go with that. There was a 6-man tag team match as well. Neville and the Primetime Players went against the New Day. An absolute crushing defeat, in my opinion. It was good to see Neville just being featured. Just the crowd goes crazy for Neville. And they're loving the Primetime Players even more as the days go by. As well as, okay, now, like I said, Roman Reigns, Bray Wyatt, I was hoping for a little bit more. Bray Wyatt, amongst any man on the roster today, is probably the best at cutting a promo. His charisma, his voice, everything comes together in that incredibly eerie setting to make him be one of the best at doing what he does, and that is essentially having some of the most intense, creepy promos, and for him to target Roman Reigns' motivations seem to make sense in his own sadistical way. These two are going to have a fight 5 weeks from now, which means Roman Reigns is not going to be as big 5 weeks from now. But looking at the Shield, because in my opinion, the Shield is really the next face of the WWE. You've had CM Punk, John Cena, Daniel Bryan, in more recent years be the faces of the WWE, a topic I might actually tackle next week. However, today, it's the Shield. It is the 3 members of the Shield, and each of them has their own storyline. I mean, Roman Reigns is a cool feud. I feel like he's going to turn at some point. I feel like it was too sudden for him to not be the champion, unless they want to make him like the next big thing, make him have a long, almost year-long championship run, because he was the muscle of the Shield. He's one of the strongest men in the ring. He's one, and the crowd is starting to love him. He has the look, and I feel like making him champion would be a smart decision, and it's a decision that's going to happen. I think maybe around Survivor Series eventually you're going to see Roman Reigns pick up that win against probably Brock Lesnar, which I'll get to in a moment. Who's Ambrose going to go against? I don't know. There's still 5 weeks to build that up, but that one backstage conversation with Kane where he's throwing darts at Seth Rollins, something really funny, and finally Ambrose, of course, establishing the fact that he gets the crowd. He said what everyone is thinking. He said absolutely what everyone is thinking. When is the Big Red Machine going to come back? He literally, finally, I feel like 5 weeks from now, Kane's gonna have a match with someone, and either at the end of the match or by then, he's gonna split from the Authority permanently. He's going to put on that red mask, be the Machine, and start literally just kicking everyone's ass. And I'm hoping for that. Corporate Kane has been bullied enough, and of course, that does allow a lot of youngsters to build off of the current success. You've seen people do that. That's what WWE tends to do. Some massive legend will allow a youngster to really flourish against them. But it's gone to the point now that Kane is almost reduced to very little in the storyline, and I feel the lurking of the Big Red Monster approaching once again, and I feel his presence coming, and I think, well, we don't have The Undertaker as often. He's going to be a once-a-year wrestler with WrestleMania, maybe for just 1 or 2 more years. I do feel, however, the Big Red Machine is going to come back, and he's going to annihilate, and I feel he's going to go for Seth Rollins, and eventually the WWE Champion, and I feel like Kane is going to have another reign. Say within 8 months to a year, you're gonna see that happening once again. He's gonna have a bunch of feuds. He's gonna kill Rollins. He's gonna go against the Authority, maybe even against Triple H, and eventually we're gonna see the Big Red Machine back. And that is something I cannot wait for. I've been waiting for months. It should have happened at Extreme Rules when he went into the cage and started choke slamming people. You saw seeds of that You're hoping for something at Payback, an ounce of it at Elimination Chamber, not so much of it at Money in the Bank. He didn't win, but my God, Kane, we're ready. I feel like we're ready. It has been a long time since Kane has been the machine that he deserves to be, and I can sense it coming very soon. However, sure, the Kane storyline is something I'm always looking forward to, but what they did with Seth Rollins building up, okay, J&J is not going to be his next opponent, Ambrose is not his next opponent, Kane's not his next opponent, even Triple H is not his next opponent. Rumors do suggest, however, Rollins and Triple H may wrestle at WrestleMania 32, which is still a long way down the road. That will, of course, mean that he loses the title, fights for it again, authority turns on him, he has a fight with Triple H, something very plausible, in fact. But the return of the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar, had the crowd go crazy, had me watching it lose my mind. Rumors suggested he was going to return after Battleground, then the official, well, not official rumors, but most rumors were suggesting he was going to return on next week's Raw. But that might have been a bit of a stretch, and he's back. And Triple H's explanation of putting Rollins under immense pressure, that speech really gave me a good wholehearted feeling of, you know, it reminded me of Triple H, in fact. Triple H being under such pressure in the younger days of his career. And him doing that to Rollins, in fact, the man with the pedigree now, is something that is incredibly important. And to build Lesnar up, the problem with Lesnar is, the only issue I have with Lesnar, he's probably one of the strongest men alive. He's one of the fittest and most agile, even for his size. And the other thing is, of course, he has incredible work ethic in terms of the way he trains. There's no doubt about it. He grew up as a farm boy. He tends to, you know, go back. I've heard he's not incredibly, say, social. He doesn't enjoy visiting WWE as often as a lot of other superstars. However, I feel he's going to be performing in Japan on July 4th, and therefore he's going to have a lot more of a presence in these 5 weeks. And I'm 100% sure he's going to take the championship back from Rollins. And then at SummerSlam, he'll probably retain it. It'll be too short of a run if someone gets it from him. He will be appearing a lot less, which is the only problem. But he'll have it till SummerSlam. And I feel like at Survivor Series, the WWE, which of course you've heard problems that they've had with Lesnar as well, they're slowly going to probably drown him out, which is unfortunate because he's my favorite superstar working today, apart from maybe Seth Rollins as well. So seeing that match is going to be crazy for me, at least, because I love them. But having Brock Lesnar wrestle at Battleground, they're going to build him up. He's going to be off and on Raw, from what rumors suggest. So that's going to be good to see. And the way he freaked out Rollins was so perfect. Rollins pulled out that performance to perfection, absolutely to perfection. And just the presence of the Beast is something brilliant, and it's something that the crowd loves. And maybe it's the fact that you don't see him as often that adds to the fact that the crowd loves him so much, but you really need to understand that even in just the way he performs, whether it's Suplex City, whether it's anything else, he's just one of the best. You look 10 years ago when he was champion, when he was the next big thing, the video game was named after him. He was perhaps one of the highest selling action figures at the time. The crowd went crazy. He had that whole year stretch post WrestleMania 19 till WrestleMania 20 where he fought Goldberg and then he left. That it was something so great to see. He is a fantastic wrestler and in-ring performer, and that's why he is, I believe, going to be at the top once again, taking the championship for Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins proved himself by beating Dean Ambrose, even though just by a shred. But I feel like at Battleground, 5 weeks down the line, this is my prediction, Lesnar's going to get the championship. Lesnar's going to have it at SummerSlam. He's going to lose it at Survivor Series to Roman Reigns. And then we're going to see Lesnar drown out a bit. But even if these are the last, say, 4 or 5 months that in a concrete manner we get to see Brock Lesnar at all, I'm looking forward to it. I really am, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the rest of the storyline, and I want to see the repercussions of this on SmackDown. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I really have to talk about with regards to Brock Lesnar returning on the June 15th episode of Raw, as well as Money in the Bank 2015. Definitely a great pay-per-view. ranks probably 3rd or 4th amongst this year's pay-per-views. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of other things next week. Of course, there will be SmackDown and Raw to talk about, but some recent developments and whatnot. And maybe, I'll try to strike a different topic. Comment below if there's any particular thing you'd love to hear about. I want to try and make this a weekly thing, try and do this as often as possible, really give you the best that I can, and talk about more rumors as well. There were a lot of rumors recently about possible SummerSlam matches that were debunked, however, so I didn't feel the need in addressing them. There's a lot more to come, a lot more that I would love to talk about, a lot more passion that I want to exude, and a lot more conversations I would love to have with you guys about World Wrestling Entertainment. Until next time, this is WWEP.